there's only so much you can change in a mash bill. Like, we know what that does, and there's not a huge lot of difference. Some of the other things that you can change.
Right.
But the thing that they know that's always big is the location of where you're storing the barrels, and then the weather that it experiences through that aging process.
Yeah. All right, so welcome back to another great episode of Power Bourbon, and tonight we're excited to talk about an amazing experience that we got to do a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So Jim Beam, if you haven't paid attention at all, is kind of like my wife's favorite distillery, I would say.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Hands down my favorite.
Mm-hmm. And so I am always trying to be, the thoughtful, good husband, to continue to buy bourbon. So completely thinking.
Motivating.
Yeah, exactly. All that fun stuff. But, happy wife, happy life. Apparently that's a thing. So Jim Beam had a tasting experience where you got to hang out with Fred and Freddie No, and they walk you through the newest release from Jim Beam.
Right. Master distillers.
Yep. Master distillers.
6th and 7th generation master distillers.
I think 7th and 8th.
Okay.
I know Freddie is 8th because I follow him on Instagram and he's like Beam Official 8 or something like that.
7 and 8. Yeah.
Yeah. And so hanging out with them, getting to understand their thought process behind this new release and everything like that is always, to me, way more exciting than anything else, because really getting to know like what they think and why we got what we got, opposed to some random marketing AI generated chat GPT thing. So the newest release from them, not the Bookers, we're still looking for that, is always looking for that, is Hardin's Creek. So if you know anything about Hardin's Creek, it came out last year and they released a 2-year-old and a 15-year-old. Mm-hmm. This year they're doing something crazy cool, and I'm super excited anytime something like this comes out. So they are going to release 3 17-year-old bourbons, all aged at different locations. So you got the Clermont, you're going to have the Frankfurt, and you have the Boston warehouses.
Kentucky. All Kentucky.
All Kentucky.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, the only difference, because the mash bill is the same, when it went in the barrels the same, is the aging location. That's it. So it's going to be completely dependent on the terroir and the rick houses, and that's what's going to affect the flavor. And they're all going to be different. Mm-hmm. So you're getting 17-year-old bourbon. MSRP is like $170, $180. So right there at the good magical $10 a year. And it's all going to be different. And it's all going to be Jim Beam, which we know is good. So this might be the release I've been most excited about this year. And we will tell you what we think. So this is our first time opening our bottle that we were able to purchase there.
Yeah, we had samples.
Yes. But our second time tasting it. So here we go.
Cheers. I should maybe also give away that the old fashioned that we had after the tasting was made with this. Yeah. With the Clermont.
Yeah, so at the tasting, we got to try the 2-year-old Hardin's Creek, which Freddie talked about how they're going to re-release every so often once it's aged more out. And then last year's Hardin's Creek, or Jacob's Well Hardin's Creek, which was 15 years. Then we got to try the Clermont. They also let us try the Lineage, because that's something both Fred and Freddie did together. And then after all of that, they took you out and you got to try an old-fashioned made with the Clermont. Yeah. And then on top of all that, the coolest thing was we got to do all of this in the
experimental little center they have.
It's the Fred B. No Distillery, the new one they made, which is basically, as they described it, the Willy Wonka playground.
Yeah, but it's just right across the street from their brand new, what would you call that? Visitors.
Yeah, visitor tour center.
Yeah.
Stuff.
It's like the main place you go with the wall with the limestone water coming down. It's like literally right across the street from that is this Willy Wonka factory that they're calling. That's the mystery place that nobody gets to see.
Yeah, so the main still is where all the Jim Beam comes out and everything like this, and this Fred B. No Distillery is where the Hardin's Creek, Booker's, Baker's, and any experimental stuff they do. Basically, as Freddie was saying, they just let him run wild. Marketing and financials get really upset with him because he said last year they did 22 different mash bills that they played with, and just let him experiment. But then he comes out with some amazing releases, and then they're like, oh, okay, it was worth it to let you play around some.
So on the nose, I'm getting a lot of the classic dusty peanut.
Yes.
It's almost like peanut butter, though. There's something kind of buttery about it. Mm-hmm. It's making me think of peanut butter. Almost like a crunchy peanut butter, where you get like the whole peanuts.
Well, I was going to say, so what it reminds me of is if you get toast right out of the toaster and you put peanut butter on it, how you get that melted peanut butter, and then that flavor starts to waft up. That's what I'm getting. And then some hints of caramel and brown sugar for days.
Yeah, it's a very nice nose.
Oh, yeah.
The palate's hitting me a little stronger. The first sip, I don't know what it was. I mean, did you say the proof? 110?
It is 110.
So it's up there, but that shouldn't be anything that feels too high. I mean, we drink Booker's, which is even higher.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother me. I don't know, this one's just a little rougher alcohol.
So on the palate, I just get caramel, brown sugar, sweetness. It's super, super sweet. It just kind of sits on the front of your tongue and just hangs out there. But then it slowly melts and just starts coating your tongue and your entire jawline. And you get some drying oak on the finish, within that peppery spice from a high rye bourbon that you definitely get in like a lot of Booker's products, that just finish it off. For me, it's not overpowering at all. That 110, I think, is just about perfect, to the point that, like, a Booker's, you have a couple sips and you're like, oh, this is high proof. I can't keep going back. This one is scary, drinkable. Like, I could just sit here and drink and drink and drink, because it doesn't ever give you that really deep Kentucky hug.
See, I'm getting a little hint of some berry sweetness in there. It's like, I don't know, little strawberry raspberry thing going on the back, but then there's like the drying oak, so it kind of reminds me of like a fancier wine, very dry wine. Red wine. Yeah,
now that you say that, I can start to get some of those fruit notes mid palate to the finish. And yeah, it definitely tastes like a good red wine, almost port finish. Like if you've had a couple port finish bourbons, it's going to kind of give you that note. Mm-hmm. And it's just there for that little end of the palate, into the finish. But that finish, oh my gosh, it just stays. And it is all...
Yeah, pretty peppery.
Yeah, peppery spice.
Pretty spicy. Mm-hmm. No, it's good. And I remember at the tasting, compared to the other things we tasted, this was my favorite.
Yeah.
For sure. So they've come out with a really good product here.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it's classic Jim Beam.
Yeah.
Like I think in a blind, you would say that's a Beam product.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about coating the mouth, and it reminded me of that classic feeling of the oiliness that I tend to get in a lot of the higher proof Beam products.
Yeah.
Where kind of lingers a little bit and even kind of like stays on the lips a bit because of the oiliness.
Yeah.
Where that spicy, the back spice is kind of happening still in my mouth, not just the back of the throat, but just kind of like everywhere.
Yeah, I'm not getting a spice down in my chest at all like you get with some really high proof stuff. It is all in the mouth, like flavorful finish and spice, not a just burning sensation.
Yeah.
So spoiler, I guess, it's pretty obvious that we are both big fans of this.
Yeah.
And at the $180, I think it's well worth it. I don't think I would go up to 200 for it just because it's really hard for me to pay $200 for a bourbon. 180, I'm going to absolutely buy one. I'm not going to buy a backup just because that's a very expensive bottle and she would kill me. Yeah. However, that being said, there are 2 more releases this year, a Frankfurt and a Boston, that I want to compare this to because Freddie said his favorite was actually Frankfurt.
Yes.
So again, this is that really cool thing that you have one, a really good bottle, but then there's going to be 2 other bottles that just change because of where they're aged. I don't like, if you like bourbon, I don't see how you can't be excited about this because this is like truly showing, hey, I mean, I guess it's the science engineering side of me. It's like, we've held everything constant except for this variable of location.
Yeah.
How's it going to affect things?
Yeah. And not only that, but we know that that makes the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Because as he was talking about, like, there's only so much you can change in a mash bill. Like, we know what that does, and there's not a huge lot of difference. You know, some of the other things that you can change.
Right.
But the thing that they know that's always big is the location of where you're storing the barrels, and then the weather that it experiences through that aging process.
Yeah.
TJ keeps saying that each of these are totally different, and it is because the layout of the land and the location of the rick houses is different. Like they were describing to us, for the Frankfurt one, for example, is along a river. And so the exposure of the weather that it gets there along a river is different than like Clermont. He said was in a valley.
Yeah, down in a valley, yeah.
So a little protected, so very different. And then the Boston one is a little bit more open. It's a little bit more open field. So that's what's so different about them is these, you know, rick house locations are very different. So this terroir truly is different from where they're being stored.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard to find a good quality. Well, it's just hard to find 17-year-old bourbon anymore. I mean, we're in the middle of a bourbon boom and everything like that. So I can honestly say, if you see this and you are a Jim Beam fan, because there's that, it is a true Beam product. There is nuttiness, deliciousness, everything like that. That being said, I would not be surprised if one of these 3 bottles don't show up in our best of for the year, because this is really, really good bourbon, and makes me excited for the other 2 releases that are coming. That being said, Jim Beam occasionally puts these bottles out at the distillery, so get there early. The good news about Jim Beam, except for this time that we went for this tour, it's usually like pretty much empty, but when we went there for the tour, like it was like parking down the street, like craziness. But we're glad that we did this and had this wonderful tasting experience and everything like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see what comes out next.
Yeah.
But I am interested. There are probably other people that will disagree. I feel like this might be one of those things that causes a lot of division with people.
Yeah, you either love it or you hate it.
And you're going to be like, oh, that's not worth that cost. I'm sure some people will put that in the comments below. But whatever.
That's fine. If you see a bottle, please hit me up at the email and I will properly dispose of that product for you. My customer service.
There you go.
All right. With that, have you guys seen Hardin's Creek? Are you a fan of Hardin's Creek, or did that 2-year-old kind of scare you away forever? Let us know. But other than that, cheers, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.